What's up guys, Jan for Chess24. In this video we'll have a look at one of the craziest Blitz games I have ever seen. This is the game of the day from the second day of the Blitz World Championship. Going into this day, Hikaru Nakamura led the field, a point ahead of, among others, Magnus Carlsen. And the game we will cover is a game by Magnus Carlsen against Carlsen-Rapport. Top player from Hungary, now represents Romania. And this is, I believe, the 14th round when Magnus Carlsen was still trying to catch up with Hikaru Nakamura. Let's get back into the action with the move 1d4 played by Carlsen. And Rapport says, what do you think about the French defense? I'll play e6, you can still go e4. Carlsen says, thank you very much, let's play another French. Pawn to d5, knight to c3. Carlsen has played a bit of French himself recently, and he even employed a line that Rapport favors to win the game against Anish Giri, which you might have seen as a previous game of the day. And we go down that Vinava road again. Very, very complicated double-edged line, very risky strategically for black, but it's also prime Rapport territory, where he feels he can use his incredible talent to understand the positions a little better. However, he is dealing with Magnus Carlsen here. B takes c3, and the line that Rapport has played quite a bit recently, and that Carlsen also used against Giri, is the move knight to c6, and after queen g4, g6. But Rapport probably felt, since Carlsen has been using this himself, he should do something else, and he chose another sideline, the move queen to c7, the main move being knight e7, which you can learn more about in Anish Giri's chessable course. But Rapport goes for the move queen to c7. One idea being that after queen g4, which still looks critical, black can play f6 and the queen covers the g7 pawn here. Rapport had some games in this line. Carlsen chose another, not less ambitious path by playing the move pawn to h4. Very typical for these structures, just trying to grab space on the king side. White is not very afraid of losing a pawn here. Black could take, go queen c3 check, bishop d2, queen takes d4, but that loses a lot of time with the queen. The position opens up, and the computer is already in love with this from the white side to bishop e3, followed by bishop d3. Rapport has something very different in mind. He wants to keep the position as close as possible. He does so by starting with knight to e7, pawn to h5. Now you can't allow this pawn to get all the way to h6, so black blocks it, plays h6, knight to f3. Not the only move. The computer mentions some moves like rook h3 as well, which looks interesting. But Carlsen goes knight to f3 with a fairly standard maneuver coming. Black plays b6, intending to exchange his bishop via bishop a6. And white says, no, I'd rather not exchange those bishops. Goes bishop b5 check, luring this bishop to d7. And after the bishop goes here, white retreats with his bishop. And he stopped black from going bishop to a6. Still, this is very much what Rapport had in mind. He now closed the position, goes pawn to c4, forcing his bishop back, and puts his bishop on a4, another typical move. Keeping an eye on c2, but more importantly, stopping white from going a4, followed by bishop to a3. And we get a very typical French lockdown structure, where white will slowly but surely try to break through on the king side with one of his pawns. Pawn to f4, followed by pawn to f5 is a typical idea. But black will hide his king on the queen side, try to stabilize, and then look for his chances by going f6 or maybe g5 or g6, opening position at the right time. Computer always prefers white in such situations, but the strategic play is highly, highly complex. And Carlsen plays a somewhat surprising move to my mind. The move bishop to f4, blocking his own f-pawn. Instead, he could have mobilized here more directly by playing something like knight h4. Let's say knight c6 or knight a6. This bishop could go to e3, and white follows up with g4, f4, preparing that f5 break. But the world champion and rapid world champion, we know, he won the rapid section as well, fighting here to win the blitz section, to claim all the crowns. Goes for the move bishop to f4, blocking his own f-pawn. Knight a6, typical maneuver. The queen should get out of the way, and the knight wants to go to c7 to stabilize e6, d5, the whole chain. Queen to d2, long castles. Knight to h2, also not sure. It's a nice maneuver, bring the knight to e3, where it keeps an eye on the c2 pawn, but it does not really help the white expansion. there were other options here. Computer gives moves like g4, or even a strange idea, bring the king over to the queen side to stabilize here. Knight h2 played, king b7, knight f1, queen d7. Rapport continues his regrouping, wants to put the knight on c7, knight to e3, knight to c7. So far, slow maneuvering phase, but don't you worry, this will get crazy fairly soon. Carlsen decides to keep his king on the king side, goes king f1, obtaining g3 and king g2. Computer wants it here, king d1, king c1, knight c6, and king f1. One reason the computer didn't like it is that black can open the position here already. By playing pawn to g5, for example, h takes g, f takes g, bishop h6 is very risky for white. Knight to g8, knight g4, say takes, queen to g7, and all of a sudden, white's coordination suffers a little, and the computer is very happy with black's position. Of course, white wasn't obliged to take any of this, but if he doesn't, black solves most of his problems. The bishop h2, let's say knight f5. Black has a good position. So the Rapport goes for knight c6, continues the slow maneuvering, and plays a maneuver Peter Leko mentioned was played by Yusupov. Queen g8, queen h7, activating the queen on this diagonal. Carlsen goes bishop f3, covering the square and also hinting at some aggressive intentions, maybe one day sacrificing with his bishop facing the black king. King goes out of the way, wasn't forced yet, he could have played rook c8 and maybe kept the king on a6. But Rapport puts it on b8. Carlsen keeps maneuvering, once again, doesn't like to push his pawns here. Goes queen to e2, rook c8 stabilizing, and rook to b2, hinting at potential play. On the queen side, also keeping an eye on the c2 pawn. Knight to b5, reminding white that he could also have weaknesses here. And this is where the drama is really starting. After a lot of maneuvering, Carlsen now springs into action by sacrificing a piece. He wasn't obliged to, he could have played whatever, queen d2, but he has to be careful that knight takes d4, c takes d4, c3. Doesn't hit him. So he does decide to go for it and goes knight takes d5. The computer approves, but obviously it's a very committal decision, sacrificing a piece. And the follow-up that Carlsen had in mind, the computer does not approve of. Because after e takes d5, pawn to e6 looks logical, but the black king just hides after king a8. Or king b7. King b7 actually played in the game. King a8 was just as good. And white doesn't get enough for the piece. Instead, the correct follow was rook takes b5, bishop takes b5, just eliminating this annoying knight. And now going bishop takes d5. When white is a rook down, only has 2 pawns, but he's so active that the black position is extremely, extremely dangerous. e6 check. Still in the air. The rook could come over here. This is not a fun position to play. Best play according to the compy is something like king a8, bishop e4, queen to g8, pawn to a4. Black shouldn't take, because then this pawn drops. Bishop to a6 and pawn to a5. White just calmly continues, a rook down, and the position remains a complete mess. The bishop b7, a takes b6, let's say a6. White now has 3 pawns and a weakened black king, but is still all to play for. A lot of drama ahead. None of this happened. Instead, Carlsen forced the issue with e6 check. The king goes away, king b7. Carlsen was hoping this passed pawn on f7 could do some damage. But after queen f5, it turns out that black has everything under control. d5 is covered, f7 is hanging, white is in dire straits. However, Magnus Carlsen finds a way to add more fuel to the flames. Goes rook to b4, offering sacrifice to keep his initiative going here. Rapport accepts. Even stronger might have been to take on c3 first, attack the queen. The queen goes away. Now to take. The point being, other than the pawn grab, that after queen e7 check, now black has queen d7, defending against this invasion, and would be well on the way to win the game. After a takes b4 instead, knight e4. Black is basically just a rook up for not very much. Still, there's a reason we chose this game. The drama is just beginning. Rook b4, knight takes b4 played, queen e7 check. king goes to a6, and all of a sudden the position is not so clear. Carlsen chooses queen takes b4, but maybe a better choice was a takes b4, clearing the way for his rook to go to a1 once again. Anything could have happened. For example, knight takes c3, rook to a1, pinning. His king can't go back, but can go forward. Sorry, I can't speak. Can go forward with king b5 and remains a complete mess. Where black is slightly better, but I don't know what that means, a rook up. It's just chaos. Instead, Carlsen takes with the queen, hits his bishop, but the bishop escapes with bishop takes c2, headed towards the e4 square. Once again, white better make something happen real fast. He goes a4, attacks the knight retreats. Once again, the all-seeing eye says knight takes c3 was good here, giving this knight up to simplify a bit, lure the white queen away. After bishop e4, really likes black's chances. But Rapport, who is a human, goes knight back to c7, and that allows bishop takes c7. The point being, I'm not sure if this was Carlsen's intention, but after rook takes c7, which looks more than normal, the f8 square is still covered. But white has an amazing move here. Rook to h4, trying to bring the rook to f4. And all of a sudden, this f-pawn is quite a nuisance because black can't take it. Queen f7, queen b5 check, king b7, bishop takes d5. Wins the queen. So black should not touch this pawn. Rook f4 is coming next. The position remains a complete mess, for example, the computer gives. Queen d7, rook f4, queen takes a4, f8 queen, rook takes, queen takes, with equality. I don't know if this was the idea. Maybe Rapport just saw after rook c7, there's queen b5 check, followed by bishop d5, and didn't want to mess with that. But in this line, black very much does keep the upper hand after king b8. Because queen e8 check, rook c8. The white attack goes nowhere. We don't know if Carlsen intended rook h4. Both players in extreme time trouble already. This is a 3 minutes plus 2 seconds per move game, after all. But Rapport decides not to recapture, but for the also very logical move, bishop to e4. Trying to get rid of this bishop. And apparently keeping all trumps in his hand, but it's far from simple. White goes bishop f4, blocks the attack. Bishop takes f3, king takes f3. And Rapport can now win another rook. And he does so by going queen e4 check, king g4, queen takes h1. Now he has 2 rooks versus just a bishop. But still, as you can see from the evaluation bar, the position is roughly equal. The white king is surprisingly safe on g4. And white, with just the queen and the bishop, of course also the f7 pawn, develops quite an initiative here. Goes queen b5 check, king b7, a5. All of a sudden, the black king is far from safe. a6 check is there. Queen d7 check is there. It remains a mess. Rapport plays the human move, rook hd8, covers the d7 square. But in computer lingo, there's a mistake, and the only way to play was pawn to g6. Don't ask me why. Trying to generate some counterplay here with h5, after which position is apparently equal. Let's say a6 check, king a8. And the best white has is queen d7 check, king a6, h takes g. Now with 2 passes, but black has some counterplay. It's too complicated. Rook hd8 is the normal move, but that runs into trouble. After a6 check, king a8, here white had an amazing little move that was missed in the game. He could have played the quiet but devastating f3. This blocks queen d1 check, but more importantly, it blocks the black queen's access to the d5 pawn, and thereby threatens f8 queen. Let's say any move. f8 queen, rook takes f8, queen takes d5 check, followed by checkmate on the next move. So f3 was winning, but Carlsen has a different idea. Not surprisingly, here's a rook in exchange down. He feels like he has to force the issue. Goes f8 queen, gives up the beauty that is the f7 pawn. His pawn is after rook takes f8. I don't think he missed that the queen covers d5 from h1. I think his point was now he can go queen d7. Threatening queen b7 checkmate, which also looks devastating because queen d1 check f3 is just one check. But Rapport finds the only way to continue. Also very logical. Goes rook takes f4 check. The point being, if the king takes, all of a sudden white is checkmated with queen e4. So white has to take with the pawn. And now black gets the chance to give quite a few checks. Queen g2 check. The king can't go forward because of queen h3, picking up the queen on d7. So it has to stay here. And we can already see that black has at the very least a perpetual check. But Rapport, who still is a rook up, but has to deal with this threat, correctly decides that he should play for more than a draw and goes g5 check. White should not take this because h takes g is checkmate, but he can use the infamous en passant rule. Go h takes g6, eliminate this pawn. Obviously, Rapport had seen this, and his point was that after queen h2, king g4, he can now use his h-pawn, since there's no more white h-pawn on h5, to keep chasing this king. h5 check. The king doesn't have a safe route to run forward. King g5, queen g3 would be bad news. So it has to go back, king f3. Rapport keeps checking. Once again, the king doesn't have a great square. If king to e3, then queen e4 check. King has to go somewhere. Queen takes f4, picks up the pawn. And after, let's say, king e1. Queen c7, there are other ways. Queen c7 stabilizes, parries the mating threats. Black should win. So Carlsen had to find a different square. Goes for king f2. Queen h4 check. King f3. But now Rapport uses the chance to exchange queens. We are by far not done with the adventures in this game, by the way. Queen g4 check. Black is still rook up. But all of a sudden, after queen takes, h takes g, king takes g4, white has two very dangerous passed pawns. And it becomes a race. The rook can't stop these pawns, but black has his own play in the form of the b pawn, which can run up the board and try to generate queen for black as well. I have no idea if the players could calculate any of this or if they were just playing purely on instinct. But as you can tell from the engine bar, all the black you see there, black should win this race and is first. However, more drama is about to come, and I would suggest that we take a look at the video of this final phase, because I think that shows it much better than I could over the board. We'll catch up afterwards with what happens. Here we go. King takes g4, pawn to b5. The race in full effect. The white pawns run, but black also gets a queen. Richard Rapport with the black pieces. Hesitating, you can see the clock, both players, on around 20 seconds here. Carlsen gets a queen, but it's Rapport to move, and he can start giving checks, keeping the g7 pawn from queening. Not an easy task for Carlsen to find a good square for his king every time, where he doesn't allow direct victory. If he steps on the f-file, for example, the queen can check on that f-file. It's changing everything. Black would win. So he has to go to h6. g6 only move. And this position, king h6 once again forced. Rapport misses a way to make it easy on himself by going queen e6 check first. We'll look at that later. Instead he pushes c-pawn, since the queen covered the rook on c8. But that gives Carlsen some hope. Rapport missed a win that we'll see later. Now all of a sudden, it's all to play for. And now after king h5, look, he wants to give a check, but then he spots queen to e8, which seems to be forcing the exchange of queens, but he misses g8 queen. And if the queen on g8 gets taken, there's a checkmate on b7. So all of a sudden, Carlsen has two queens, and Rapport is with his back to the wall. Tries to create something, giving some checks. But two queens cover a lot of ground. And Carlsen finds the killing blow, wins the game. You can see, exhausted the world champion. What a thrill ride. And let's have a look at the action in slow motion here. We saw this race. Black is just in time. And had white had a b pawn on b2, white would be winning this. But he doesn't. So we saw Both sides get a queen. Black still rook up. Some strong checks by Rapport. Here is the first key moment. If he goes queen to e6 check here, the king goes somewhere. Now everything's protected. The rook is covered, this square is covered, and black can just push c3. There's no hope for white. If he gets his own queen, then black just takes everything, and queen's a c-pawn. Instead he goes c3 directly, which is fine, but it gives Carlsen at least a chance to confuse matters more with queen f7, threatening queen b7 checkmate. Queen h4 is alright, king g6, and here Rapport misses his last golden chance to wrap up the game easily by playing rook c6 check, forcing this king to the f-file finally. And now, after queen f2, white just lose the queen and would have had to resign. But Rapport was very focused on giving queen checks with no time on the clock. Goes for queen checks, queen e4 check, king g5. This position already not so easy. And after queen e3, computer, for the first time, gives white some hope here. Says this position is now a draw. Queen e2, best play, king g5, and the white king can keep stepping out of the checks here with a draw. And here Rapport commits this tragic mistake, thinking that he finally found a way to wrap it up. Plays queen to e8, pinning the white queen, and it looks like he's forcing the queen exchange, after which he would win. But he missed the crucial trick, g8 queen. What a move. And after queen takes g8, queen b7 would be checkmate, as the queen would no longer be pinned. But queen takes f7, queen takes f7 all of a sudden leaves white with the decisive material advantage. So we've seen the final stage. Rapport gives some desperate checks, but it's over. The two queens are too strong. And Magnus Carlsen goes on to win this game, where he was dead lost more than once. But what a fight. What drama. Maybe the most exciting Blitz game I've ever had the pleasure to watch live. And the victory was also important because Magnus Carlsen managed to overtake Hikaru Nakamura. In the end, it was a very bumpy ride, but Magnus Carlsen becomes the Blitz world champion. Let's have a look at the final scores. He scores 16 points in the end. Nakamura 15, so Carlsen, final 9 rounds, outscored Nakamura by 2 points and wins the triple crown. Classical world champion, Rapid world champion, Blitz world champion. Congratulations to Magnus Carlsen and the medal winners Nakamura, Matti Rosian, everybody else. Was a tremendous event to watch, and yeah, that game was definitely a highlight. Thanks for watching this game of the day. See you soon.